Hello, my name is Eden. My number is 8034100A, and my level is junior. The masterpiece I choose is The Real Thing by Henry James. When the porter's wife, who used to answer the house bell, announced a gentleman and a lady, "Sir," I had, as I often had in those days, the wish being father to the lot, an immediate vision of sitters. Sitters my visitors in this case proved to be, but not in a sense I should have preferred. There was nothing at first, however, to indicate that they might have come for a portrait. The gentleman, a man of 50, very high and very straight, with a moustache slightly grizzled, and a dark grey working coat admirably fit, both of which I note professionally. I don't mean as a barber or yet as a straight tailor, while have struck me as a celebrity, if celebrities often were striking. It was a truth of which I had for some time been conscious that a figure with a good deal of frontage was, as one might say, almost never a public institution. A glance at the lady helped to remind me of this paradoxical law. She also looked too distinguished to be a personality. Moreover, one would scarcely come across two variations together. Neither of the pair immediately spoke. They only prolonged the preliminary gaze, suggesting that each wished to give the other a chance. They were visibly shy. They stood there letting me take them in, which, as I afterwards perceived, was the most practical thing they could have done. In this way their embarrassment served their cause. I had seen people painfully reluctant to mention that they desired anything so gross as to be represented on canvas, but the scruples of my new friends appeared almost insurmountable. Yet the gentleman might have said I should like a portrait of my wife, and the lady might have said I should like a portrait of my husband. Perhaps they weren't husband and wife. This naturally will make the matter more delicate. Perhaps they wish to be done together, in which case they ought to have brought a third person to break the news. "We come from Mr. Rivet," the lady finally said with a thin smile that had the effect of a moist sponge passed over a sunk piece of painting, as well as of a vague allusion to vanished beauty. She was as tall and straight, in her degree, as her companion, and with 10 years less to carry. She looked as sad as a woman could look whose face was numb, charged with expressions. That is, her tinted oval mask showed as an exposed surface showed friction. The hand of time had played over her freely, but to an effect of elimination. She was slim and stiff and so well dressed, in dark blue clothes, with sleeves and pockets and buttons, that it was clear she employed the same tailor as her husband. The coupe couple had an indefinable air prosperous trip. They evidently got a good deal of luxury for their money. If I was to be one of their luxuries, it would behoove me to consult my intents. Oh, Claude recommended me, I echoed, and I added that it was very kind of him, though I could reflect then, as he only painted landscape. That wasn't a sacrifice. The lady looked very hard at the gentleman, and the gentleman looked round the room, then staring at the floor a moment and stroking his moustache. He rested his pleasant eyes on me with the remark, "He said you were the right one." "I try to be, when people want to see." "Yet we should like to," said the lady anxiously. "Do you mean together?" My visitor exchanged a glance. "If you could do anything with me, I suppose it would be double." The gentleman stammered. "Oh, yes. There is naturally a higher charge for two figures than for one." "We should like to make it pay," her husband confessed. "That's very good of you," I returned, appreciating so unwonted a sympathy, for I suppose he meant play the artist. A sense of strangeness seemed to draw on the lady. "We meant for the illustrations. Miss Reeve said you might put one in." "Put in an illustration?" I was equally confused. Schedule, you know," said the gentleman, coloring. It was only then that I understood the service Claude Reeve had rendered me. He had told them how I worked in black and white, for magazines, for storybooks, for sketches of contemporary life, and consequently had copious employment for models. These things were true, but it was not least true. I may confess it now, whether because the aspiration was to lead to everything or to nothing. I leave the reader to guess, that I could get the honor, to say nothing of the emolument of a great painter of portrait out of my bed. My illustrations were my pot boilers. I looked to a different branch of art. Far and away the most interesting it had always seemed to me to portray my friend. There was not shame in looking to it also to make my fortune. But that fortune was by so much further from being made from the moment my visitors wished to be done for nothing. I was disappointed, for in the pictorial sense I had immediately seen them. I had set their type. I had already settled what I was to do with. Something that would absolutely have pleased them. I afterward reflected. "Oh, I began as soon as I had mastered my surprise. I couldn't bring out the dangerous models. It seemed so little to fit the cause." "We haven't had much practice," said the lady. "We have got to do something, and we have thought that an artist in your line might perhaps make something of us." The husband shrugged off. He further mentioned that they didn't know many artists and that they had gone first. On the off chance, he painted few of course, but sometimes put in the figures. Perhaps I remember to Mr. Reeve, whom they had a met a few years before at a place in Norfolk where he was sketching. We used to sketch a little ourselves, the lady hinted. It's very awkward, but we absolutely must do something. Her husband went on. Of course, we are not so very young, she admitted with a wan smile, with the remark that I might as well know something more about them. The husband had handed me a card extracted from a neat new pocketbook. Their appurtenances were all of the freshest, and inscribed with the words Major Monash. Impressive as these words were, they didn't carry my knowledge much further. But my visitor presently added, I've left the army and we have had the misfortune to lose our money. In fact, our means are dreadfully small. It's awful trying a regular strain, said Mistress Monarch. They evidently wish to be discreet, to take care not to swagger because they were gentlefolk. I feel them willing to recognize this as something of a drawback, at the same time that I guess at an underlying sense, their consolation in adversity, that they had their points. They certainly had, but these advantages struck me as preponderantly social, such for instance as what helped to make a drawing book look well. However, a drawing room was a waste or ought to be a picture. In consequence of his wife's allusion to their age, Major Monarch observed, naturally it's more for the figure that we thought of going. We can still hold ourselves up. On the instant I saw the figure was indeed their strong point. It naturally didn't sound bad, but it lighted up the question. She had the best one, he continued, nodding at his wife with a pleasant and after-dinner absence of circumlocuting. He could only reply as if we were in fact sitting over our wine, that this didn't prevent his own from being very good, which had led him in turn to make answer. We thought that if you ever had to do people like us, we might be something like it. She particularly for a lady in a book, you know. I was so amused by them that, to get more of it, I did my best to take their point of view. Although it was an embarrassment to find myself appraisingly physically, as if they were animals on hire or useful place. A pair whom I should have expected to meet only in one of the relations in which criticism is tacit. I looked at Mistress Monache judiciously enough to be able to exclaim after a moment with conviction, "Oh yes, a lady in book." She was singularly ladylike, a bad illustration. "We'll stand up if you like," said the manager, and he raised himself before me with a really grand air. I could take his measure at a glance. He was 6 feet 2 and a perfect gentleman. He would have paid any club in process of formation and in want of a stamp to engage him at a salary to stand in the principal window. What struck me at once was that in coming to me, they had rather missed their vocation. They could surely have been turned to better account for advertising purposes. I couldn't, of course, see the scene in detail. I could see them make somebody's future. I don't mean their own. There was something in their for a West Coast maker, an hotel keeper or a soap vendor. I could imagine we always use it printed on their bosoms with the greatest effect. I had a vision of the brilliancy with which they could launch a table pole. Mistress Monash sat still, not from pride but from shyness, and presently her husband said to her, "Get up, my dear. I'll show how smart you are." She obeyed, but she had no need to get up to show it. She walked to the end of the studio and then came back blushing, her fluttered eyes on the partner of her appeal. I was reminded of an incident I had accidentally had a glimpse of in Paris, being with a friend there, a dramatist about to produce a play, when an actress came to him to ask to be entrusted with a part. She went through the place before him, walked apart and down as Mistress Monash was doing. Mistress Monash did it quite as well, but abstained from applauding. It was very odd to see such people apply for such poor pay. She looked as if she had 10,000 a year. Her husband had used the word that described her. She was in a London current jargon essentially and typically smart. Her future was in a same order of ideals, unspeakably and irreproachably good. For a woman of her age, her waist was surprisingly small. Her elbow, moreover, had the orthodox crook. She held her head at a conventional angle. But why did she come to me? She ought to have tried on jackets at a big shop. I fear my visitors were not only destitute but artistic, which will be a great complication. When she sat down again I thanked her, observing that what a draughtsman most valued in his model was the faculty for keeping quiet. "Oh, she can keep quiet," said Major Monash. Then she added jocosely, "I've always kept her quiet. I'm not an I'm not a nasty figure, am I?" It was going to wring tears from me, I felt. The way she hit her head, ostrich-like, in the other broad bosom. The owner of the expense addressed his answer to me. "Perhaps it isn't out of place to mention, because we ought to be quite businesslike, oughtn't we, that when I married her she was known as a beautiful statue." "Oh dear," said Mr. Smollett ruefully. Of course I should want a certain amount of expression, I rejoined. Of course, and I had never heard such an anonymity. And then I suppose you know that you'll get awfully tired. But we never get tired, they eagerly cried. Have you had any kind of practice? They hesitated. They looked at each other. We have been photographed immensely, said Mr. Manage. She meant the fellow have X'd out themselves, added the mayor. I see, because you are so good looking. I don't know what they thought, but they were always after us. We always got our photographs so nothing, smiled Mr. Smollett. We might have borrowed some, my dear, her husband remarked. I'm not sure we have any left. We have given quantities away, she explained to me, with our autograph and that sort of thing, said the mayor. Are they to be got in the shops? I inquired at the Foundry's presently. Oh yes, sirs, they used to be. Not now, said Mistress Monage with her eyes on the floor. I could fancy the sort of thing they put on the presentation copies of their photographs, and I was sure they wrote a beautiful hand. It was all how quickly I was sure of everything that concerned them. If they were now so poor as to have to earn shillings and pence, they could never have had much of a margin. Their good looks had been their capital, and they had good humor readily made the most of the career that this resource marked out for them. It was in their faces, the blankness, the deep intellectual repose of the 20 years of the country house visiting that had given them present intonations. I could see the sunny Florian groves sprinkled with periodical citizenry, in which Mistress Monarch had continuously said. I could see the wet shrubberies in which she had walked, equipped to admiration for either exercise. I could see the rich covers the mayor had helped to shoot and the wonderful garments in which late at night he repaired to a smoking room to talk about it. I could imagine their leggings and waterproofs, their snowy trees and rocks, their rows of sticks and case of tackles and neat umbrellas, and I could evoke the exact appearance of their servant and the compact variety of their luggage on the platforms of country stations. They gave small tips, but they were blacked. They didn't do anything themselves, but they were welcome. They looked so well everywhere. The creative feel, the general relish for stature, complexion, and form. They knew it without fatuity or vulgarity, and they respected themselves in consequence. They weren't superficial. They were thoughtful and kept themselves up. It had been their line. People with such a taste for activity had to have some life. I could feel how even in a dull house they could have been counted on for the joy of life. At present something had happened. It didn't matter what. Their little income had grown less. It had grown less, and they had to do something for pocket money. Their friends could like them, I make out, without liking to support them. There was something about them that represented credit. Their clothes, their manners, their type. But if credit is a large empty pocket in which an occasional chink reverberates, the chinks at least must be audible. What they wanted of us was to help to make it so. Fortunately, they had no children, and soon divided that. They was also perhaps wish our relation to be kept secret. This was why it was for the future. The reproduction of the face would betray them. I like them. I felt what did their friends must have done. They were so simple, and I had no objections to them if they would suit. But somehow with all their perfections I didn't easily believe in them. After all they were amateurs, and the ruling passion of my life was the detestation of the amateur. Combined with this was another perversity, an innate preference for the presented subject over the real one. The detective of the real one was so apt to be a lack of representation. I liked something that appeared, and one was sure. Whether they were or not was a subordinate and almost always a profitless question. There were no other considerations, the first of which was that I already had 2 or 3 recruits in use, notably a young person with big feet, in old Peckham, from Kilburn, who for a couple of years had come to me regularly for my illustrations and with whom I was still, perhaps ignorably, satisfied. I frankly explained to my visitor how the case could do, but they had taken more precautions than I supposed. They had reasoned out their opportunity, for Claude Brew had told them of the projected edition deluxe of one of the writers of our day, the rarest of the novelists, who, long neglected by the multitudinous vulgar and dearly prized by the alternative. Need I mention by Jean Philippe Vincent had had the happy fortune of seeing, late in life, the dawn and then the full light of a higher criticism, an external made in which on the part of the public there was something really of expiation. The edition preparing, printed by a publisher of taste, was practically an art of high preparation. The woodcuts with which it was to be enriched were the homage of English art to one of the most independent representative of English letters. Major and Mr. March confessed to me they had hoped I might be able to work them into my branch of the enterprise. They knew I was to do the first of the book, Rutland Randy Day. I had to make clear to them that my participation in the rest of the affair. This first book was to be a test, must depend on the satisfaction I should give. And this should be limited. My employers will drop me with scarce common bones. It was therefore a crisis for me, and naturally I was making special preparations, looking about for new people should they be necessary, and securing the best type. I admitted, however, that I should like to settle down to 2 or 3 good models who will do for everything. Should we have opened to a put on special clothes? Mr. Monarch timidly demanded. Dear, yes. Let's hope the business. And should we be expected to supply our own costumes? Oh yes, I have got a lot of things. A painter's model put on or pulled off anything she likes. And you mean, the same? The same. Mrs. Monash looked at her husband again. Oh, she was just wondering, he exclaimed, if the costumes are in general use. I had to confess that they were, and I mentioned further that some of them. I had a lot of genuinely greasy, less sanitary things. It served then time, 100 years ago. On living words stand men and women on figures not perhaps as far removed, in that vanished world, from their type, the monarch court of a rich and bewitched age. We'll put on anything that fits, said the major. Oh, arrange that they fit in the pictures. I'm afraid I should do better for the modern life book. I'd come as you like, said Mr. Monarch. She has got a lot of clothes at home that might do for contemporary life. Her husband continued. Oh, I can fancy scenes in which you'd be quite natural, and indeed I could see the slipshod rearrangements of stable properties. The stories I try to produce pictures for without the exasperations of reading them, whose scented tracks good that it might help to people. I had to return to fix that for this sort of work. A daily mechanical grin. I was already equipped. The people I was working with were fully adequate. I only thought we might be more like some characters, said Mr. Monarch mildly, getting up. Her husband also rose. He stood looking at me with a dim wistfulness that was touching in so fine a man. Wouldn't it be rather a poor thing, something to have? He hung fire. He wanted me to help him by phrasing what he meant, but I couldn't. I didn't know. So he brought it out accordingly. The real thing, a gentleman, you know, or a lady. I was quite ready to give a general assent. I admit that there was a great deal in that. This encouraged Mayor Marsh to say, following up his appeal with an negative gulp. It's awfully hard. We'll try everything. The gulp was communicated. It provoked too much of his wife. Before I knew it, Mr. Monarch had dropped again upon a divan and burst into tears. Her husband sat down beside her, holding one of her hands, whereupon she quickly dried her eyes with the other while I felt embarrassed as she looked up at me. There isn't a confirmed job I haven't applied for, wait for, pray for. You can fancy we that breeding head first. Secretaryships and that sort of thing. You might as well ask for a peerage. Either be an anything unstrung, a messenger or a calm helper. I'd pull down a gold lace up and open carriage doors in front of the haberdashers. I'd hand about the station to carry portmanteaus. I'd be a postman, but they won't look at you. There are thousands as good as yourself already on the ground, gentlemen, poor beggars, who have drunk their wine, who have kept their hunters. I was as reassuring as I knew how to be, and my visitors were presently on their feet again while, for the experiment, we agreed on an hour. We were discussing it when the door opened and Miss Chong turned in with a wet umbrella. Miss Chong had to take the omnibus to Maida Vale and then walk over a mile. She looked a trifle browsy and slightly spellish. I scarcely ever saw her come in without thinking afresh how odd it was that being so little in herself, she should yet be so much in others. She was a maigre little Miss Chong, but was such an ample heroine of romance. She was only a speckled cockney, but she could present anything, from a fine lady to a shepherdess. She had the faculty as she might have had a fine voice or long hair. She couldn't spell and she loved beer. Now she had 2 or 3 points, and practice and a knack and a moderate wit, and a whimsical sensibility, and the love of the dirty, and 7 sisters, and not an ounce of respect, especially for the edge. The first thing my visitor saw was that her husband's umbrella was wet, and in their spotless perfection they visibly wronged at it. The rain had come on since their retrieval. And all in a soak. There was a mass of people in the bus. I wish you lived near a station, said Miss Chong. I request her to get ready as quickly as possible. And she passed into a room in which she always changed her dress. But before going out, he asked me what she was to get into this time. It's the Russian princess, don't you know? I answered. The one with golden eyes in black violet bed for the long fin in the cheap side. Golden eyes? I say, cried Miss Chong, while my companion watched her with intensity as she withdrew. She always arranged herself when she was late. Before I could turn around, and I kept my visitor a little unperturbed, so that they might get an idea from the scene that what would be expected of themselves. I mentioned that he was quite my notion of an excellent model. She was really very clever. Do you think she looks like an Russian princess? Major Monarch asked with looking alone. When I make her, yes. Oh, if you have to make her, there is not without point. Let's read the most you can ask. There are so many who are not remarkable. Well now, here's a lady and with a persuasive smile he passes on into his wife's who's already made. Oh, and not a Russian princess, Mistress Manoj protested a little coldly. I could see he had known some and didn't like them. There at once was complications of a kind I never had to bear with Miss Chong. This young lady came back in black velvet. Her gown was rather rusty and very low on her lean shoulders and with a Japanese fan in her red hands. I reminded her that in a sense, the thing I was doing her, she was to look over someone's head. I forget whose it is, but it doesn't matter. Just look overhead. I'd rather look over the stove, said Miss Church, and she took her station near the fire. She fell into a position, settled herself into a tall attitude, gave a certain backward inclination to her head and a certain forward droop to her fin, and looked at least to my prejudiced sense, distinguished and charming, foreign and dangerous. We left her looking so while I went downstairs with Major and Mr. Manoj. I believe I could come about as near it as that, said Mr. Manoj. Oh, you think she's shabby, but you must long for the alchemy of art. However, they went off with an evident increase of comfort founded on their demonstrable advantages in being the real thing. I could fancy them shuddering over Miss Church. She was very droll about them when I went back, for I told her what they wanted. Well, if she can sit, I'll take to bookkeeping, said my mother. She's very ladylike, I replied at an innocent form of aggravation. So, so much that's worse for you. That really means she can turn around. She'll do for the fashionable novels. Oh yes, she'll do for them, my mother humorously declared. Had they bad enough without her? I had often sociably denounced them to Miss Chong. It was for the elucidation of a mystery in one of those his book works that I first tried Mistress Monarch. Her husband came with her to be useful if necessary. It was sufficiently clear that as a general thing he would prefer to come with her. At first I wondered if this were all for propriety's sake, if he were going to be jealous and meddling. The idea was too tiresome, and if it had been confirmed it was speedily have brought our acquaintance to close. But I soon saw there was nothing in it and that if she accompanied Mr. Monash it was, in addition to the chance of being wanted, simply because he had nothing else to do. When they were separate, his occupation was gone and they never had been separate. I judged rightly that in their awkward situation, their close union was their main comfort and that this union had to no weak spot. It was a real marriage, an encouragement to the hesitating adult for pessimist to crack. Their address was humble. I remember after a while thinking it had been the only thing about them that was really professional, and I could fancy the lamentable lodging in which the major would have been kept alone. He could sit there more or less grimly with his wife. He couldn't sit there anyhow without her. He had too much tact to try and make himself agreeable when he couldn't be useful. So when I was too absorbed in my work to talk, he simply sat and waited. But I liked to hear him talk. He made my work when not interrupting it less mechanical, less special. To listen to him was to combine the excitement of going out with the economy of staying at home. There was only one hindrance, that I seemed not to know any of people this brilliant couple had known. I think he wanted order extremely during the term of our intercourse. Whom the deuce I did know. He hadn't a stray sixpence of an idea to fumble for, so we didn't spring it very far. We confined ourselves to questions of leader and even of liquor, saddler and bridge makers and how to get excellent claret cheap, and matters like group trains and the habits of smoking. His lore on these last subjects was astonishing. He managed to interweave the station's master with the ornithologist. When he couldn't talk about great the things, he could talk cheerfully about smolder, and signs I couldn't accompany with him into reminiscence of the fashionable world. He could lower the conversation without visible effort to my level. So Ernest's desire to please was touching in a man who could so easily have knocked one down. He looked after the fire and had an opinion on the draughts of the stove without my asking him, and I could see that he thought many of my arrangements not half knowing. I remember telling him that if I were not rich, I'd offer him a salary to come and teach me how to live. Sometimes he gave a random side of which the essence might have been. Give me even thought to bear old Warwick at his, and I'd do something with it. When I wanted to use him, he came along, which was an illustration of the superior courage of women. His wife could bear a solitary second through, and he was in general more discreet, showing by various small reserves that She was alive to the propriety of keeping our relations markedly professional, not letting them slide into sociability. She wished it to remain clear that she and the major were employed, not cultivated, and if she approved of me as a superior, who could be kept in his place, he never saw me quite good enough for an equal. She said with great intensity, giving the whole of her mind to it, and was capable of remaining for an hour almost as motionless as before a photographer's lens. I could see she had been photographed often, but somehow the very habits that made her good for that purpose unfitted her for mine. At first I was extremely pleased with her ladylike hair, and it was a satisfaction on coming to follow her lines to see how good they were and how far they could lead the pencil. But after a little skirmishing I began to find her to insurmountably stiff. To what I worked with it was drawing looked like a photographs or a copy of a great photographs. Her feature had no variety of expression. She herself had no sense of variety. You may say that this was my business and was only a question of pleasing her. Yet I placed her in every conceivable position and she managed to obliterate their differences. She was always the lady certainly, and into the bargain was already the same lady. She was the real thing, but always the same thing. There were moments when I rather breathed under the serenity of her confidence that she was the real thing. After she dealing with me and all her husbands were an implication that this was lucky for me. Meanwhile, I found myself trying to invent types that approach her own, instead of making her own transport itself, in a clever way that was not impossible, for instance, to poor Miss Charm. Arrange as I would and I take the precautions I would. She always came out in my pictures to tell, landing me in the dilemma of having represented a fascination woman at 7 feet high, which, out of respect perhaps to my own very much scantier inch, was far from my idea of such a personage. The case was worse with the major. Nothing I could do could keep him down, so that he became useful only for presentations of burly gents. I adore rarity and range. I cherish human accident. The illustrated note I wanted to characterize closely, and the thing in the world I most hate was the danger of being ridden by a type. I had quarreled with some of my friends about it. I had parted company with them for maintaining that one heart had to beat, and that if the type was beautiful, witness Bethel and Leonardo. The servitor was only again. I was neither Leonardo nor Raphael. I might only be a presumptuous young modern searchers, but had held that everything was to be sacrificed sooner than character. When they claimed that the obsessional form could easily be character are retorted, perhaps superficially, whose it could be everybody's, it might end in being nobody's. After I had drawn Mistress Monarch a dozen times, I felt surer even than before that the value of such a model as Miss Church resided precisely in the fact that she had no positive stamp, combined of course with the other fact that what she had no positive stamp, combined of course with the other facts that what she did have was a curious and inexplicable talent for imitation. Her usual appearance was like a curtain which she couldn't draw up at the request for capital performance. This performance was simply suggested, but it was a word to the wise. It was vivid and pretty. Sometimes even I thought it, though she was playing herself, too insipidly pretty. I made it a reproach to her that the features drawn from her were monotonously betterment, as we used to say, graceful. Nothing made her more angry. It was so much her pride to feel she could see for characters that had nothing in common with each other. She would accuse me at such moment of taking away her reputation. It suffered a certain shrinkage. This queer quantity, from a repeated visits of my new friends. Miss Churn was greatly in demand, never in want of employment, so I had no scruple in putting her off occasionally, to try them more at my ease. It was certainly amusing at first to do the real thing. It was amusing to do Major Monarch's trousers. That was the real thing, even if he did come out colossal. It was amusing to do his wife's black hair. It was so mathematically neat, and the particular smart tension of her tight dress. Her lent herself especially to positions in which her face was somewhat averted or blurred. She abounded in ladylike black heels and profile produce. When she stood erected, she took naturally one of the attitudes in which court painters represent queens and princes, so that I found myself wondering whether, to draw out his accomplishment, I could get the edit of the Cheapside to publish a real royal romance, a tale of Buckingham Palace. Sometimes, however, the real thing and the make-believe came into contact, by which I mean that Miss Churn, keeping an appointment or coming to make one on days when I had much work in hand, encountered her invidious rivals. The encounters was not on their part, for they noticed her no more than if she had been a housemaid. Not from intentional loftiness, but simply because as yet, professionally, they didn't know how to fraternize. As I could imagine they would have liked, or at least that a major word. They couldn't talk about the omnibus. They always walked and they didn't know what else to try. She wasn't interested in good friends or cheap claret. Besides, they must have felt in the air that she was amused then. Secretly derisive of their ever knowing how. She wasn't a person to conceal the limits of her faith if she had had a chance to show them. On the other hand, Mistress Monash didn't think her tiddy, so why else did she take pains to say to me? It was going out of the way for Mistress Monash that she didn't like dirty women. One day when my young lady happened to be present with my older suitors, she even dropped in when it was convenient. For a chat, I asked her to be so good as to lend a hand in getting tea, a service with which she was familiar and which was one of her class that, living as I did in a small way, with slender domestic resource, I often appealed to my models to render the leg to lay hands on my property, to break the seating and sometimes the china. I made them feel bohemian. The next time I saw Miss Churn after this incident, she surprised me greatly by making a scene about it. She accused me of having wished to humiliate her. She hadn't resented the outrage at the time, but had seemed obliging and amused, enjoying the comedy of asking Mistress Monash, who sat vague and silent, whether she would have cream and sugar, and putting an exaggerated simper into the question. She had tried intonations, as if she too wished to pass for the real thing, till I was afraid of my older visitors would take offense. Oh, they were determined not to do this, and their touching patience was the measure of their great need. They would sit by the hour, com- uncomplainingly, till I was ready to use them. They would come back on the chance of being wanted and would walk away cheerfully if it failed. I used to go to the door with them to see in what magnificent order they retreated. I tried to find other employment for them. I introduced them to several artists, but they didn't take, for reason I could appreciate, and I became very anxiously aware that after such a disappointment, they fell back upon me with a heavier weight. They deemed me the honor to sting me most therefore. They weren't romantic enough for the painters, and in those days there were few serious workers in black and white. Besides, they had an eye to the great job I had mentioned to them. They had secretly set their hearts on supplying the right essence for my pictorial vindication of our fine novelist. I knew that for this undertaking I should want no custom effects, none of the frippery of past age, that it was a case in which everything would be contemporary and satirical and presumably genteel. If I could work them into it, then their future will be assured, for the labor will of course be long and the occupation steady. One day Mistress Monash came without her husband. She explained his absence by his having bad to go to the city. While she sat there in her usual relaxed majesty, there came at the door a knock which I immediately recognized as the subdued appeal of a mother out of work. It was followed by the entrance of a young man whom I at once saw to be a foreigner, and who proved in fact an Italian acquainted with no English word but my name, which he uttered in a way that made it seem including all others. I hadn't then visited his country, nor was I proficient in his tongue, but as he was not so many constituted. What what Italian is, as to depend only on that member for expression he conveyed to me, in familiar but gracefully mimicry, that he was in search of exactly the employment in which the lady before me was engaged. He was not struck with him at first, and while I continued to draw a drop with signs of interest or encouragement. He stood his ground, however, not importunately, but with a dull, dog-like fidelity in his eyes that amounted to innocent importance. The manner of a devoted servant, he might have been in the house for years, unjustly suspected. Suddenly it struck me that this very attitude and expression made a picture, whereupon I told him to sit down and wait till I should be free. There was another picture in a way he obeyed me, and I observed as I worked that there were others still in a way he looked wonderingly, with his head thrown back about the high studio. He might have been crossing himself in St. Peter's. Before I finished, I said to myself, this fellow's bankrupt orange monager, but a treasure. When Mr. Monet withdrew, he passed across the room like a flash to open the door for her, standing there with the rapt, pure gaze of a young dandy, spellbound by the young Beatrice. As I never insist in such situations on the blankness of British domestic, I reflected that she had the making of a servant and I need one, but I couldn't pay him to be only that, as well as of a model. In short, I resolved to adopt my bride adventurer if she will agree to be shared in a double capacity. He jumped at my offer and in the event of my rashness, for I had really known nothing about him, wasn't brought home to me. He proved a sympathetic